Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and in today's video I want to answer a question that I get asked every now and then when I do videos featuring traffic patterns, and that is how exactly do I do my setup for those patterns. So let's get right into it. We've just loaded the Phoenix A320 with IAE engines on the VHS runway 14, and from here we are going to do a couple of traffic patterns to check on the flight dynamics. Now, let's go ahead with how I set up those patterns. We're going to start with a basic layout. So that is basically fuel and weight. And you can easily do that in the config menu down here on the FMS. So let's say fuel, we're going to go for something like 6 tons. And in terms of zero fuel weight, let's make it 56 tons, so that we end up somewhere around 60, between 60 and 65 tons of gross weight. That is usually very good numbers for a 737 or an A320. From there on, we can now go into the general system setup, since we're now done setting up the airplane itself. So, quick scan of the overhead panel here, making sure that all the switches are in a good position for our flight. You will notice that I don't really go over any actual procedures here, but I basically just go for a very quick form of a setup. Now let's quickly go ahead and use the ATSU in order to request our current weather information, so that we know what we are going to set up on the altimeters. So LDRI is what we're looking for, and going to request a METAR here, send that out. Right, call from the cabin, let's take that. Hello?
The cabin is now secure for takeoff.
Thank you. Alright, so that's reset, thank you. And then going further ahead with our system setup, we can do stuff like the weather radar, spoilers, flaps, and finally auto brakes and config. Now, with that, our airplane itself is basically set up as soon as the flaps are extended. From there on, let's go into the FMS setup, which is probably what most of you actually came for. So we are going to basically do a very basic setup for a departure and an arrival at the same time. So starting on the init page, LDRI/LDRI is going to be our route, and did I mistype something? Probably did. Lima Delta Romeo India /Lima Delta Romeo India. Alright, here we go. We don't need an alternate, we do need a call sign, so I'm just gonna do Airbus 320 in here, cost index 0, doesn't matter what you put in there. And as cruising altitude, I am going to choose my pattern altitude, normally 1500 above the field elevation, so you can see field elevation, if we just press the V button to adjust the QNH, roughly 250 feet, so 1700 is going to work just well. From there on, we continue to the flight plan page, and we're going to start setting up our route. So we're on runway 14 over here. No sit, insert that, and then for the arrival, I'm not going to insert any arrival since it'll be visual, so runway 14 is in there, and insert that. Now on to the fuel prediction page, where we can insert our weight and balance. So I'm just going to do 56 tons, 25% CG, and the rest of it doesn't really matter too much. Alright then, now we can go ahead with our performance. And over here, you really gotta know how accurate you want to do those things. You can just use some general performance figures, like for an A320 at that weight, you're typically going to go very well if you just choose a config 1 takeoff and takeoff speed 140, 140, 145. That is generally going to work pretty well. But for our purposes, let's just go ahead and do a little bit more sophisticated setup here. Like that. And for the CG, I don't know, maybe 30 takeoff CG or something. Doesn't matter too much, that only becomes relevant for the actual rotation, so be aware of that. Alright, thank you. So, calculate, send to MCDU, and that's it. With that, we are pretty much done. Okay, so, flap MCDU disagree, that's true. We gotta go for our config 2 here, which we've just calculated, and here we are. So, takeoff config test, ready. Alright, perfect. So, with that now done, let's continue with our arrival setup. And for the arrival, basically what we got to do is to insert just the most important stuff. So we have already inserted the visual approach runway 14, and what we can do now is we go all the way straight on the performance pages here, to our approach page, and we can take our weather from here and insert that. So we take a QNH of 1008, temperature 10 degrees, wind 0, what's that, 060 at 4. And we could pre-select the flap setting. We're going to start with config full today, so that basically finishes up our setup. Last thing then, we move up to the FCU and the EFIS control panel, and we're just going to make an appropriate selection for our flight. So in our case, I'm going to visualize the VOR displays and dial in a pattern altitude of 1700. Alright, and that's basically it. With that, we are fully set up for our traffic patterns, and we can go ahead, release the parking brake, and go fly. So that is pretty much how I do my setups for my pattern work. So very basic sit and star, not to say just no sit and star at all. In case of a Boeing airplane, I would probably have inserted something like an ILS approach or so. In the Airbus, not really needed. In both aircraft, you could obviously just create a waypoint from the extended centerline, like I've basically done down here. But it is important that you do have your landing runway selected so that the ground speed mini function in the Airbus aircraft is capable of providing you with the corrected V approach. So that's one important thing that you definitely need to do. Also, I do recommend to do the entire descent setup on the ground already, because you will basically have very, very little time in the air. So if you just do that on the ground, easy going, and in the air, all you need to do that is to hit activate approach phase, and that's it. Alright, I do hope you found this one interesting. If you did, be sure to let me know in the comments below. I'm really looking forward to your take on this one. And with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching. Hope that you've enjoyed the video, and I do hope to see you again on a future one. In the meantime, if you really liked it, be sure to leave a like on YouTube as well, as it does really help out the channel. Be sure to subscribe if you're up for more, and leave a comment to let me know what I can do better. Finally, if you really like what I'm doing, would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Until then, thank you very much for watching, and see you all again on the next one.